Hello and welcome back to the Pilots Podblast. I'm Dave and I watched The Winter King episode 9. Hello and thanks for joining me a day later this week because I was out and about yesterday, bought myself a new motorbike. I say new motorbike, it's an old motorbike. It's a Honda DeVille that I'm going to be naming Derval, I think. Anyway, on with the video. Bedwyn is dead, so Morgan and Derval are left to take his body back to Arthur as a message. I'm not sure what's up with Gorford at this moment because his intentions would include Morgan and Derval being dead anyway, so you may as well do that, and that would send a very clear message, wouldn't it? But onwards. So, en route back to Arthur, a journey that now only takes a day because it needs to within the story, Morgan instinctively stops to talk to a stranger who turns out to be Cywin. Cywin wandering about the forests, very much like Guinevere used to do. And she delivers a warning to Arthur that she is betrothed to a Saxon, and thus creating a pact between the Saxons and Powys. So they deliver the news to Arthur, and suddenly the Saxons are a bigger threat now, as they'll soon literally be in bed with Gorford, well, at least his daughter. But the Saxons aren't all that. We've seen this. We've got Arthur, and Arthur has his throwing arm, 20 knobbly sticks, and a river, and he'd just have them all off. For this episode, Arthur spends his time dealing with the trauma of being beaten and then exiled by Uther, which has led to him not playing nice with others. But thanks to Guinevere and King Tudric, he learns to include others. And a part of this self-improvement means that he finally cleans Excalibur because he is ready. He is ready because it is a time for war. But it's not a time for war, and we'll get to that. Derval gets to play amateur detective, giving people the squeeze, interviewing, walking around with a log to compare to the trees that it might be cut from, and he discovers that the
coronavirus
was nothing to do with Nimue. Confronting Arthur, we get to see Derval for real. This is probably the best scene that he's had until he walks off. He kind of walks without moving his arms. It's weird. You see a lot of it in this episode because there's a lot of shots of Derval just wandering about the place. But it is so nice to see him not acting like a child. Instead of feeling a subtle itching and his own conscience giving him grief, as in the books, Derval's scar full-on causes him to drop to his knees in pain. The directing of this episode, I'll get to that. This, of course, prompts Derval to ride off to the Isle of the Dead, which is something that we predicted last week. Bedwyn is buried, and Morgan is the only one that's really bothered by it. Not even the show seems that bothered by it. Lots of turning away in the deliveries of this episode, which just reminded me of this.
Last time I saw you were...
Washing the car? Yes, I imagine you have many questions. I was under a lot of stress that day, Douglas. I think we both were. We both knew it wasn't working. I picked up my sponge and bucket with a heavy heart that day. The rest is a blank. The next thing I can remember with any clarity is being on a kayaking holiday 2 years later. Oh, that looks good. What's that?
The director showing their best to say, you know, this conversation is so intense that you're surely enjoying this much better than any battle because this is drama. As always, this is just my opinion. Other stuff happened, but this is a filler episode with the theme of revelation. That's been strong-armed by the director. Who's the mysterious girl? It's Cywin. Who's the mysterious girl? It's Guinevere. What killed the Christians? Oh, it's let's do an establishing shot of a dead goat thrown onto the floor of the throne room, because bringing a
coronavirus
bloated animal corpse into the hall when we actually have words to describe the things that we have seen discovered that day and that we can convey, is drama, stinking goat. Next week, Arthur is going to a meeting with his brilliant plan of just giving the Saxons weapons, essentially. So the action's going to be provided by Derval in the Isle of the Dead instead, which would be nice and budget friendly. So it's going to be the end of the next episode, the last episode, which is going to be an escalation for the start of the next season. Right, that's me. Nice and brief, because this is a filler episode as much as this was a filler episode. So it just does mean that next week the budget's going to be spent, isn't it? This is what we've been leading up to. It's all happening next week. Yeah? I'll see you then.